This podcast is brought to you by ServPro. Thank you, ServPro, for sponsoring this podcast. We love you guys. If you guys have any fire or water restoration needs, ServPro is the people you need to call. So basically what they do is, like, if you were to have a fire and it comes and it engulfs your house and you have leftover ash and your clothes smell like fire, they can take all that and make it like it never even happened. Same thing with a flood. If your hot water heater bursts and you get water all over your house, I have some really good friends that had that happen and they had to move to a hotel for weeks. ServPro can come in and make it like it never even happened. Within time, they can come back in and your house looks exactly the way it did before the water or fire. So go check them out, ServPro of Paris. Thank you guys again so much. Let's get this podcast started. Welcome to another Paris, Texas, a podcast. This is a podcast where you get to listen to people's stories, people that have either influenced or lived in the city of Paris, Texas. I love hearing their stories, and I can't wait for you to hear the next guest. All right, well, let's get this thing going. Okay, so this guest is special to me. He's a longtime friend, kind of, sort of a relative.
Kind of, sort of, yeah.
And we'll get into that. And just an overall great guy. Russell Jackson, what's up, man?
Broadway, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to jump in at the beginning. Where are you even from?
Well, I was born and raised here.
Awesome.
I was born, I guess it was still McQuestion Hospital
Yep.
back then, but right here, 1982, and I have been here my whole life, lived in a few different places here in Lamar County, but only slept away from Paris in this community for my freshman year of college. And
Wow.
Other than that, I have been here my whole life and anticipate being here my whole life.
Okay, so you went to North Lamar. I know
did,
this because
right?
we graduated together.
That's right.
That's part of our story together. Tell everybody a little bit about, like, your school years and what was your thing through middle school, high school time frame.
Gotcha. So, of course, started at Aaron Parker and went through, my senior year at North Lamar. And mostly I was into athletics. Football was my passion. I played pretty much every sport except for baseball, but also was involved in the arts. And in junior high, was in the band and tried that out for a little bit. Found out it really wasn't for me. It was pretty hard to do band and athletics at the same time. I knew there were some guys that did that in the halftime. They'd be in their football uniforms out there marching. I didn't want to try to do the double duty. And so transitioned from band because I wanted to stay in the arts and involved in music. And I went into choir and really enjoyed that. So in high school, it was football primarily, but also basketball and track, powerlifting, and then choir. And Christy Hardy was my choir teacher, and I loved her. I miss her a lot, and I hope she's doing well.
I totally forgot about the choir thing. Now that you talk about it,
Yeah.
like, it comes like of course he did. I remember that.
Yeah.
But I forgot about that.
Well, and a lot of people just thought about, football or sports. And that was really my passion. But I did enjoy, trying to broaden, I guess, my experience a little bit and not just focus on one thing.
And then I do remember track because cross country was my thing.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Long-distance track. And
right.
So we went on many bus rides for track together.
Yes, we did. I can't believe there's people that are willing to run more than one lap.
Yeah.
That was my length at most. It was the shortest possible races that I could do. So kudos to you and everyone else who was crazy enough to keep on running after one lap.
Yep. Now, if I remember correctly, you hurt yourself a couple times in football.
Yeah, I have. I certainly feel the results of my time on the football field still. Couple of pretty bad knee injuries, one worse than the other. But
you shattered it once, didn't you?
Yeah, I did some pretty significant damage to my right knee.
Oh man,
that laid me up for a while. I actually had to go into physical therapy for a long time. Now, back then, it wasn't as advanced as it is now. And so that same injury today may have put someone out of commission for, I don't know, maybe 3 months.
Yeah.
Back then, it caused me to miss the entire football season, most of the basketball season. I was laid up for a while. And so, yeah, I can still tell that my knees aren't perfect, but it was a lot of fun, and I absolutely wouldn't change anything, even, having gone through that.
Now, I don't know if it's running for me or what caused this, but, like, can you sit on the ground too long?
No. And I don't know if that's just getting old.
I think that's getting
I mean, there's definitely that possibility. But no, I have to really be aware of the position that I sit in for any period of time at all. Yeah, I definitely know it when I stand up. And then I have to kind of take a little time to get the joints lubricated again, and so that I don't feel sorry for myself walking around.
Yeah.
Sure, like everybody else too.
Right? I've got an 8-month-old, and anytime I want to sit down and play with him on the ground, but when I get back up, I'm like, oh, why did I do this?
No doubt.
It's brutal. So just jumping into our story a little bit, my brother is your cousin.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's how we are technically, it's a by marriage relation, related situation. But, so that's how we ended up knowing each other through school a little bit, outside of school, I guess.
Right.
We didn't technically go to, like, family reunions or anything like that.
Yeah, at that point, as far as the family reunions go, there may have been, just a couple that, when we were a part of the same family, that were still going on. My dad's mom, she was kind of the matriarch of the family, and the person that said, everybody better be at the family reunion.
Yeah.
And when she passed away, that kind of fell, to the wayside. And so I think most of the time that we were part of the same clan, it was after she had passed away. So, yeah, we didn't do a whole lot of the family reunion type stuff.
Gotcha. But, we were friends in high school. I was a lot shyer back then.
Yes, I remember that.
I didn't talk as much, and I was still trying to figure out who I was. It took me traveling a little bit to figure out who Broadway is. All right, so coming out of high school, you're graduating. What was your goal in life? What was your plan?
Well, my plan was, of course, I wanted to continue playing sports, and so I had a few different options to do that, but I knew that that wasn't going to pay the bills, or I had a pretty strong suspicion already, I'll put it that way. If I think probably everybody that you ask that question to at some point fancied themselves a professional athlete or whatever, but I was able to, get some money for college, which certainly helped, but I didn't suspect that I was going to, support my family with professional sports. So thought I'd go into
NFL or anything.
Yeah,
like that.
As much as I wanted to, that's just, I didn't think that was going to be a reality. And of course, that did prove to be true. I wasn't going to be the next person from my alma mater, or at least initially, to go into the NFL. But figured I would go into business and specifically banking. Had family. My wife's grandfather, J.B. Bankhead, he was a longtime banker in this community. My mom, Laura Jackson, has been, employed with People's Bank for a lot of years. And so just had other family and friends that were in the banking industry, and really thought that that's what I would end up doing. And so I went to Austin College over in Sherman as a freshman. And Austin College is a really good academic institution. And it's really great for pre-law and pre-med. A lot of teachers come out of there. Not as much for business. And, I chose Austin College because of its proximity to Paris. So I was close to home. I was drivable for sure. So I could come home with my laundry. Mom and Dad were really excited about that on the weekends. But also, could, be close to home, play football there. And my grandmother actually went there as well. My mom's mom went there. And so there was some legacy there. And but I wanted to be a business major. So when I got there, realized pretty quickly that the curriculum, the offerings that they had weren't as geared for business as it was some of the other things. So, I was a business management major, I believe is what they called it, and they had ended up being a finance major, and they had one finance course in the entire business curriculum. So it ended up not being a great fit.
Austin College?
Yeah, Austin College.
So did you not finish at Austin College? Did you move away after
I didn't.
the freshman year?
So I guess that's a part of the story, as far as kind of how that goes and how that all came about. But I started there my freshman year. I had my, a typical freshman experience. Lived on campus in a dormitory, was on the football team, pledged, had a good time, had the low GPA to prove it, that I had a good time. But pretty quickly into my freshman year, I had already met Cassie, my wife. And
before you went to college?
Yeah, so in July of 2000, so right after you and I graduated, we started dating, and pretty quickly in my time there at Austin College, we realized we were going to be parents together. Wow. And so my oldest daughter, Kylie, who, unusual to say this, but is about to go off to college in like 2 weeks. We're dropping her off in Austin.
I don't even think about it.
Yeah, she was born the summer after my freshman year at Austin College. And so, of course, we're kids, and we have a kid. And I realized real quickly, talking about how you're going to, what you're going to do in life and how you're going to support your family, and realizing that, the NFL, that was a pipe dream, and it was time to get real. So went to work, moved back home. I was driving back and forth between Paris and Sherman, and working full-time, going to school full-time, sleeping a little bit here and there, and then she was born in June of 2001. And so continued working full-time, driving back and forth full-time. And the way that Austin College did their enrollments for the next year, it was based on first your number of credits or units, the way that they measured your hours basically, and then second by GPA. Well, so my sophomore year, I was driving back and forth, and I took the bare minimum to be full-time as a student. My scholarships required me to remain full-time, and but just the bare minimum. So I was taking like 3 classes a semester, which was full-time over there. And by the time that it came time to enroll in my junior classes, the way that they did it, it was really unusual. We would line up based on the number of units we had and then our GPA, which again, I had a good time my freshman year, so my GPA wasn't really great. Okay, so basically I was at the end of the line for the next year juniors. And when I got into, we lined up and we had to run into the gymnasium and run to the table for the class that you wanted. It's a antiquated system, but it was what they did. The last class that was available that fit my work schedule, commuting, and to remain full-time, I would have had to have taken Native American literature. I mean, literally, that was the only option that I had to fit my schedule. I was like, okay, look, that is this is not working anymore. Yeah. And so at that point, I transferred over to commerce and majored in finance for my undergraduate, and then got my master's in business administration there.
All right, that's awesome, dude.
That was a long-winded version of how to get to that point. So I guess we're here to talk, right?
Yep. So I got 2 things I want to bring up. First thing, how did you meet your wife?
So this is all right. So we graduated at the same time, so we're the same age. This was the very, very beginning of the internet. You probably remember your first computer in the house. I know I remember mine. The dial-up, the 14.4.
We didn't have one.
Gotcha. So I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Though this was at the very, very beginning. So back then, we didn't have iMessages and all this kind of
Facebook
stuff, right? None of that.
Instagram,
so,
Snapchat.
No, so there was basically, if I remember right, there was AOL, like Instant Messenger.
Yep,
okay?
I remember that.
And then there was this this other app or
Program,
program, yeah, whatever it was called back then,
Yeah.
called ICQ. And on ICQ, one of the cool features about it was you could search and see anybody who was in your community. If they were online, you didn't have to be. There wasn't a thing where you were friends or anything like that.
They
you could
were
just,
active.
yeah, you could just see anybody who was online. Well, I had come home late after having a good time one night, and decided to, instead of going to bed, to get online and see who was on ICQ. And now Cassie, my wife, she's awesome. I mean, she was a sweetheart. Pastor's daughter, good girl, had already gone to bed early and gotten up really early that day. And for whatever reason, instead of getting a warm glass of milk or whatever you do to go back to bed, she decided to get on ICQ. And so when I searched to see who was online, she was the only person in Paris that was online at that time.
And this is the summer between graduating and going to college.
That's right.
Okay.
And so we had gone to school together, but she graduated the year before us.
Okay.
And we were in beta club together, and a few different things like that, like
So
choir.
you were familiar with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were in choir together. We were in beta club together, but we didn't really talk a lot in high school. And so anyway, we were chatting online, and I asked her out. And I guess, long story short, we're 20 years later, 4 kids later. It's been awesome. I'm really glad that she was online.
That was a good conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. So you graduated from school. Oh, second question. I remembered.
Yeah.
I knew I was going to forget that. And more of a statement / second question. So your oldest daughter has a connection with me because she is in theater.
Right.
Is she in choir too?
No, she took some voice lessons, but she
Okay.
never really did choir. Maybe like a year in junior high, if I
Okay.
remember right. But
And then my oldest son, who's 8, I think he was 7 whenever they did this together. They were in a play together. They were in Big Fish. And she played his... What was she to him?
oh my goodness,
And I should remember this.
she's been in every single musical
so you
and
can't
one
remember.
act, even going back as far as
Middle
being
school?
Yeah, well, in elementary school,
Yeah.
when the Paris Community Theater had summer programs.
That's what we're doing right now.
Which is an awesome program. It's a fantastic program. She has done so many different parts and roles. I have a hard time keeping them straight.
I think she played his mom in Big Fish.
I trust you. You were up there more than I was because
Right.
you had to be there with
Yes.
your kiddos.
Because he was little.
We were
little.
thankful that we were able to drop her off and then go home and relax a little bit because, man, I tell you what, we talked about what we did in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And, I thought that, athletes put in a lot of time, and they do, but I don't think there's a single program that has to put in as much time as the theater program.
Oh.
I mean, it is really, really, it was eye-opening. I wasn't a part of that world. And, I think I went to one performance back when we were in high school, Into the Woods. And I was like, man, this is awesome. But I had no idea what it took
Magnitude.
to make that awesome.
Yes.
And the number of hours that those kids put in, and the directors, Laura Hutchins, Cody Head, Stephanie, the Easton, they all do, and all of these teachers that do all of the extracurricular, my hat's off to them because it takes a tremendous amount of time and energy to make those performances happen.
Yes, huge fan of the theater. I was actually in theater in high school. I did a couple plays, but I was nothing more than a tree or that guy that stood over there. Or I didn't, in my high school years, I didn't invest in things as much as I do now. Like when I decide to do something now, I'm all in. But that wasn't quite my personality in high school. But just jumping on the Cody Head bandwagon, huge friend of mine, great guy. He's actually been on the podcast. So if you guys are listening, go back, listen to Cody's podcast. He's a great guy. But yes, all of those names you named, there's a couple others, and I don't, some of them I don't even know their names, that are hugely invested in making those big. Paris High also has a really good drama team.
Absolutely.
And we've actually done a couple of PCT plays with Liam. He loves it. He's all in. You ask him, for the longest, you've asked him what he wants to be when he grows up, and he wants to be a singer who acts on stage.
Wow.
That's what he wants to be.
That's awesome.
At 8 years old.
Yeah.
So we try to invest in that as much as we can, even at his age, because I think that's what a parent should do.
Absolutely. And when my kids get involved in extracurricular activities, and we have tried the approach where, hey, if you're interested, let's give it a shot. Let's see where this goes. And so a lot of times that leads to 1 or 2 years of an activity. But parents, I think, have these preconceived notions about what it's going to be like, what their kids are going to do. And we've talked about sports. That was something I thought I would have a team full of football players, right?
Yeah.
Well, I have 3 girls and a boy, and I don't think any of them are going to play football. And quite frankly, I hope that they don't play football, even though I love it. We've become a theater family.
Yeah.
Kylie has been in it for years, and really that was her passion. She loved it. And she's now about to go off to the University of Texas at Austin. And one of the reasons why she was so excited to go to Austin was the opportunity to continue, pursuing acting, and something that she will do, on her own. She won't do it in an official capacity through the school at this point. But then my next daughter, Claire, who will be a sophomore at North Lamar next year.
Now she's the tech one, right?
Yes. So she has been on stage, which her first performance, she played Kylie and Claire were both in The Wizard of Oz before they were in high school. They were little, and they played Poppies. Well, the role of the Poppies was to go to sleep, right? So you've got 20 kids on stage playing Poppies, and all of them have gone to sleep on cue except Claire. Claire realized that she had the best seat in the house for the show, and so she sat there with her, her head in her hands, legs up, just really enjoying taking it in from not even the front row, on stage.
Yeah.
And so that was her beginning in acting and in theater. But she's really gravitated toward the tech side of the house. She likes, and she's done some stage stuff too.
Yeah.
So she had a role in the musical as a freshman. But in one act as a freshman, and even in the musical, she helped do the tech, makeup, hair, sound, lighting. And so even this coming year, she's really decided that's where she wants to focus. She loves being a part of that group.
Yeah.
And so that's really, where she's found her home, I think, so far.
Awesome.
But, talking about the extracurricular stuff for your kiddos, you encourage them to do whatever, and you just kind of see how it shakes out. And Carter, my son, who will be in 8th grade next year, he's been involved in the drama department at the junior high level.
Yeah, and he did something with Liam a couple years ago too, because I remember him being there when I was dropping Liam or sitting with Liam. So
yeah,
it's your whole family.
The whole family, and then my youngest, Kelsey, she will be in 6th grade next year for the first time.
Okay.
And so haven't done any theater or acting or anything like that just yet with her at this age, but in all of the different things that they've been involved in, whether it was sports or different band or choir, art, theater, I think is the single best activity to prepare them for life, to give them the skills that are needed. And I've thought a lot about this, to really be successful in life, because if you think about it, those kids have to overcome the fear. I think the number one fear, if the statisticians are right, that speaking in public.
Yeah.
And to see the dedication that they have and to then overcome that also.
Yes.
It's such a valuable skill. They get the teamwork, the discipline, that public speaking ability. And so I'm a huge fan of theater, and I'm really excited that my kids have chosen that path.
It's awesome. I think it's funny. Sorry, I didn't mean for this podcast to slip into a parenting podcast, but I love where it's going. I think the funny thing is, at least as a young parent, I was expecting to live vicariously through my kids.
Oh, for sure.
I wanted them to do the things that I loved because I wanted to do the things that I loved.
Right.
It's almost
Absolutely.
a selfish reason.
Sure.
As I'm growing as a parent and growing with my kids as a parent, I've realized that I've lucked out in the sense that they do like the things that I like. I mean, my oldest has his own YouTube channel. My middle loves doing video games and stuff like that, which is kind of techie and something that I enjoy to be a part of. And then the theatrical stuff is something that I've been involved with throughout my growing up. But I always said, and I realized in raising my kids, that even if they do want to play football, I will be there. I will be the dad with a camera. I will film the whole thing. I will make a highlight reel. Because I still love doing what I do. That's what I do for a living. But I still want to be there for when they're having a touchdown or, shooting it through the hoop or whatever they're doing. So far, I've lucked out that they really enjoy doing stuff that I really enjoy, so I get to be involved in what they're doing.
Absolutely. And even though the path that they've chosen it wasn't something that I was passionate about,
right,
it's very easy to become passionate about something that your kids are passionate
very
about.
Easy.
And I know I did, I'll speak for myself, a lot of those, ideas and preconceived notions about what your kids will do and what they'll want to be interested in and how you'll parent. And then you have kids and you realize, and I've got 4, Cassie and I, and they're all different. They all have different gifts and they all have different passions. And even though it seems like we're kind of trending in the same direction with a lot of them, my youngest, she's been really involved in gymnastics and dance and,
awesome.
Things like that. And so you just end up, I'm sure all parents, you're just a fan of your kids.
Oh,
and
yeah,
you want to be there to support them no matter what path they end up taking. And you try, at least we have tried, to let them search for that path and then really, support them once they find it.
That's amazing. All right, so we skipped over a bunch.
We did.
So you came back, you went to Commerce.
Yes.
Jumping back a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm terrible about jumping around
no, it's
anyway.
Okay.
So
we're tracking.
Cool. So Kylie's born. Okay.
Kylie's born.
And I was 19 when she was born. Cassie was 20. And so we're still kids. I mean, Kylie is now 18 and we're about to drop her off in Austin. And I'm thinking in 2 weeks, that's way, way too close. And I'm thinking, man, only a year away from, in my life, being a parent. And, so she's born the summer after my freshman year and, realized that what I was doing wasn't going to continue to work. So transfer over to Commerce and begin, my junior year there. Well, Austin College is a private school. And so Texas A&M Commerce is a public school. And when I transferred from Austin College to Commerce, they said, well, this whole year's worth of class is basically congratulations for taking them, but doesn't mean anything for us.
Doesn't mean anything.
So I lost a year of school when I did that. And I finished up. It took me 5 years to finish up my bachelor's degree in finance because of losing that year. And then I went straight into my master's program. I was ready to be done. And I really wanted to get my master's degree, personal goal, business goal. But yeah, when I was finished, that 6th year, when I was doing that, I was working full time as a pharmacy technician here in town.
In Paris.
In
'Cause
Paris.
you lived in Paris and traveled
The whole time,
Commerce.
yeah. Other than my freshman year at Austin College, I lived here, I worked here, and I drove to school.
Gotcha.
And so by the time that I got into my master's degree, I was working, full time, 40 hours as a pharmacy tech. I was, taking mostly online classes because it did, it worked better for our life. But it still had some classes over there in commerce. And so my normal schedule, and this time we had 3 kids. Okay. So Cassie, we've been very fortunate. Cassie has stayed home, and really, I think that's, it was certainly worth the sacrifices that we had to make, because she was able to be there for them all the time. But by then I had 3 kiddos. Cassie was staying home with them. We'd already by this time bought a house and had all the regular bills that you have for a household, a family, and so working, going to school, and every once in a while I got to sleep.
Yeah, grew up real fast.
Oh man, my normal, I would get home off of work at about 9:30. We'd have dinner then because everybody was on my schedule, and the kids weren't in school yet, and so might maybe watch a movie or a little something on TV to wind down. Then I start doing homework, and so normally I went to bed at about 6 a.m. in the morning. I slept until 11 because my work day started at noon, and I popped up and did it again. Wow. So it was it was certainly worth it for sure, but I don't necessarily recommend. Hope my kiddos don't take the same path as far as that. There's certainly easier paths to take.
All right, so you graduated from college.
Yeah.
What was the did you have a plan, a goal?
Yeah, so at that point I still was thinking banking. Okay.
Cuz your wife's grandfather?
Yes, JB Bankhead.
Yep.
Long time banker here in town. Lamar was where most of his career was. He was really one of the most influential people in my decision to do that. I had a lot of respect and admiration for him and what he had accomplished.
Did you know him prior to knowing your wife?
No, not really.
Okay.
I won't say that I knew him. I'd heard his name, but I didn't know him. And but just watching, the family involved in banking, that was still my assumption. And so graduate and, like a lot of us, start going out and looking. And I'm looking around town and talked to a couple different banks here that I had the opportunity to go to work for, but it just wasn't exactly the right fit, position, whatever it was. It just wasn't exactly the right fit. And one of the bank presidents that I was talking to, my name came up in conversation that he had with Gil Flott, who was running an insurance agency here in town back then. And Gil cold called me, and he said, "Hey, have you ever thought about insurance and as a career?" And I hadn't, and there was no real reason why I hadn't. It never crossed my my radar, and so. We met over the course of a couple of months multiple times, and I did a lot of research about the industry and the company that I went to work for to start my career, and I realized that it was a pretty good fit for me. It was a good opportunity, a good business opportunity. I like people. I like talking to people. I love this community, and this was an opportunity for me to be here and to support my family.
Yeah.
We really thought that we'd have to move to Dallas, or a lot of people think that they have to move off.
I know anything,
I know you moved off. Our class, it was probably 50-50. Would you say people that felt like we have to leave as soon as possible?
And that was me.
Yeah, and I was in the other side of the fence where I loved Paris, and I didn't want to get away. As part of why I chose to go to school close. I've always been a fan of this community and the people in it, and so I'm really happy that through happenstance I ended up here and in the insurance industry, and it allowed me to stay here with my family and our families.
I will say this, and I've said this in many a podcast, so most of y'all have heard this. It took, and it sounds terrible, but it makes sense when you think about it. It took me traveling. It took me going and seeing other parts of the world to realize what I really loved about Paris, Texas.
Yeah.
And I mean, call it education, call it whatever you want. Like as a kid, I just was ignorant to what was beautiful about our community. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think that is an easy thing for anyone who has been in one place their whole life.
Take it for granted.
You really do, and that's easy. That's not a knock,
especially
on anybody.
As a kid.
Oh, for sure, and even for me, loving this place even as a kid. That was solidified the more that I traveled.
Yeah.
And,
totally.
You get out there, and there's lots of cool places.
Mm-hmm.
But you realize that, some are bigger, some are a lot bigger, some are a lot smaller. The size of Paris in our community, for me anyway, is just right. We've got pretty much everything that you could ever need, and maybe not everything that you want, but it's getting closer, and it's an exciting time to be here and to be a part of this community. It's just the right size to really have good relationships with people, to know people. No matter where you go, I know you do the same thing. You walk in and somebody's there that you know.
Yeah.
And that's cool. I mean, that is such an awesome opportunity for the folks that live here and really embrace that. I mean, if you want to be anonymous, it's maybe a little bit difficult to do that here. But man, it's just the right size, and the people here are so generous and so giving. And in a community like this, you really have an opportunity, whether you're in business or whether you're just wanting to give back through volunteering to the community, you really have an opportunity to make your mark and to really be impactful.
Yeah.
You go to a place like the Metroplex or Austin, and it's extremely difficult to make your mark.
In the city,
right?
Or
absolutely.
on a larger scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if you want to make your mark in a small in your like neighborhood, or something, you can
for sure.
But like being able to be involved in the chamber, be involved in the city, be involved in like big decisions. Like, this is a place to do it. There's tons of opportunities.
Absolutely, and lots of great people that are standing right there with you, shoulder to shoulder, and help steer the direction of the community. And that's cool, man.
Yeah, love it. All right, so how long have you been in insurance?
12 years.
12 years.
Just about 12 years. And so started, I graduated in December of 2006.
Okay.
And I started my career in insurance in May of 2007.
Okay.
And so, was with the company that I started with, as an agent here in town for the first 11 years of my career, and loved it. I mean, it gives me an opportunity to get out and talk to people, talk to my friends, help people that I've known my whole life, and I love that.
Yeah.
And that was why it was such a natural fit for me. And then, throughout the years, they start to identify people who they want to go into management.
Yeah.
And so I had kind of been tabbed for that and gone through a management training program. And about a year and a half ago, had the opportunity to go into management, to promote into management, and began driving back and forth, running our office in Fannin County, in Bonham. And, we talked about commuting back and forth to school earlier, and so it didn't bother me too much to do that. This is about as far as you would want to commute back and forth, but it was also with the understanding that eventually that my family would move that direction. And we talked about it for a long time before I ever agreed to take that role. And I had turned down things before, or the opportunity to promote sooner, because it wasn't the right time to move my family.
Yeah, makes sense.
And Cassie and I talked a lot about it, and we were on the same page that now was the right time. If we were going to do this, that it made sense now for us. Get Kylie graduated and through her time here at North Lamar, and then everybody else would be reasonably okay with making that change. And, that was a great opportunity. And, when the doors open in front of you, sometimes you have to walk through them because they may not open again.
Yeah.
But one thing that really, really was solidified for me in that commute back and forth and in working in a different community that's a great community was just how important this place was in Paris, in this community, and the people and the relationships that I have here. And so wasn't looking to do anything different, but an opportunity presented itself to me. Got a call from a friend who, Clifton Finley, who we served on the Boys and Girls Club board together here in town for about a decade. And so we had a relationship. We had worked together in the volunteer world, and they have an office over in Bonham, and of course that's where my office is. And he calls me up one day and says, "Hey, let's go to lunch." And I didn't think anything about it. That wasn't that unusual of a phone call. No. And so long story short, we're having lunch there, and they wanted to bring me on as a partner with Pearson and Finley, and so we talked a lot about it. My wife and I did, and it's a fantastic opportunity, and an opportunity to come back here and really be in this community and in Paris permanently, for the rest of our lives. And so I did that. July 1st was my first day as a partner here with Pearson and Finley Insurance, and I'm super excited to be a part of that team. When you begin your career in any industry, I think it's probably the norm that you look up to certain people and identify certain people that you want to emulate, and that you say that person is doing it right. Yeah. And Curtis Finley was one of those people for me. He had been a longtime member of the community, extremely well respected, just one of the best agents in this area. And so early on, he was a person that I identified with, that I wanted to be like.
You look up to people in your industry. Everyone does.
Absolutely. And so to have the opportunity to come back home and to be a part of that group, with Curtis and Clifton and Claudia and Cindy Morton, that was an opportunity that there was absolutely no way I was going to turn it down.
That's crazy. And I'm so excited for you. I told you this earlier that that's such an achievement. And I mean, it kind of, after hearing your whole story and talking to you, thinking about all that work you put into school and how you were going towards banking, but then you went to this route, but then to spend the last 12 years of your life to get to this achievement in life, that's pretty amazing.
Well, thank you. It's humbling, and it's I think a lot of people, when you find the right fit, and this is important, something that we talk to our kids about a lot. You really need to spend time, and frankly, mine was more accidental than deliberate as far as finding the right fit in life. For something that you can be passionate about and something that's a good career and a good fit for you. Each of us has different gifts, and things that you're better at, or I'm better at, or our kids are all different and better at. And if you can find alignment with your gifts and what you end up doing in life and the purpose that you have, man, it makes it easy to have a long and successful career in something, no matter what that is.
Oh, I would agree with that 1,000,000,000%, because I think part of why traveling was important for me in life, it took me going out and seeing things and going out and finding myself before I could come home and be me. I didn't get into video and photos and just overall being creative until I was in my middle 20s, and then when I found that, I knew it was something I loved doing. But then I spent 10 years trying to figure out how that best fit me. Right. And that's before I even started to get, I've only owned my own business for 3 years, 4 years. And I mean, once I figured that out, I dove in heads first. And that's when I really do truly feel like I get to wake up and do my passion every single day.
That's awesome.
I'm not mad at what I do. Monday is not a bummer to me. Yeah. You know what I mean? I was already working on Sunday because I enjoy doing it. So no, I agree with what you're saying 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. There's probably a lot of people that think, how can you be passionate about insurance? I mean, and it's not really the most exciting topic. But what I'm passionate about is, educating people, helping people. It's one of those things that everybody's got to have. And, no, it's not exciting. And
it could be a miserable thing, or it could be an easy thing. And I mean, you have been my agent in the past.
Right.
And I think you made, because me and my wife called it, because when we went to you, I remember, sorry, this is a funny side story.
Sure.
When we first went to you, we started calling it adulting.
Adulting, yeah.
Because we didn't do life insurance at the time. We just did like homeowners and car insurance, and we finally was like, listen, we're adults. We have kids. We have things, like, we need to do this the right way. So
absolutely.
I remember you coming out to the house and going through the whole thing with this. You made it very easy.
Well, and that's, I know that when you're in insurance, or you are selling. Okay, right. I understand that. But my approach has always been, this has been my mindset, and this is the way that I've interacted with you and with all of my clients is, I want to understand your situation and make sure that I ask the right questions to educate both of us.
Yeah.
So that I know what you need, and I can advise you, hey, this is the risk that I see. If I were sitting in your position right now, this is what I would do. And so I've always approached it from like an educational standpoint and a problem-solving standpoint. I don't really approach it from a sales standpoint.
Yep.
And yes, I end up writing a policy, but that's just the way I've done it for 12 years, and it's worked well. It's led to a good career, and one in which, I think that has been beneficial for the folks that I've worked with, because it's not a tangible product. It's not something that you get to unwrap at Christmas and play with, but it's one of those things that, everybody's got to have. And so taking the time to explain how it's going to help you and what it does and find the right fit for you and your situation, that is fun. I am passionate about that, and that is my purpose.
I have the perfect example of what you just described.
Okay.
So, I don't know how many years ago it was. They did a rezoning of the flood zones.
Okay.
And it was this curveball, like, we'd only been in our house for like 6 months. We just bought it, and it's one of those things, like, when you buy a house, like, my wife's very budget. Like, she went through, we thought through what our budget was going to be.
Right.
So they throw this curveball at us, flood insurance. So we went from like not needing flood insurance at all to like needing the top tier flood insurance.
Right.
And it was a very frustrating situation.
Yeah.
Because the price tag was very high on that.
Right.
And we went to a different person because we didn't know where to go. And I remember calling you because I think this is when we actually made the switch to using you for everything.
Right.
And we went in there, and you handled it exactly the way you just described. It was a problem to solve. It was I remember you saying stuff like, "It's gonna be okay. We're gonna figure this out."
Right.
You're like, I don't even know what this is. It just happened.
Right.
Like, so it's new to us just as much as it's new to you, but we're gonna figure it out. And you handle that super, and that's why we moved I think we moved everything to you because, you handled it so well, and you got us through that because we were stressed out to the max. Like, we just bought a house, and now you're telling us we have to pay that much more a month.
Yeah, and it's not optional.
Yeah. That sucks. And you gave us your phone number. We were able to call you because it progressed. Like, it got better. Fortunately,
right.
It got better.
Right.
We did figure it out.
We did.
But we were able to call you and talk to you through that whole process, and you were able to, like, you just handled it perfectly.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and like I said, it's certainly not everyone's passion, but it is something that I have really truly enjoyed, and I like working with folks here that I've known for my whole life and been a part of their lives in this community for a long time, and it's rewarding.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking me to be on Broadway. I appreciate it very much.
This was awesome.
Cool.
And I have to say, like, as like Beard family, like, we're killing it.
You know what? I have respected and admired your beard for a long time.
As I have yours. Yours is like got a different thickness to it. Like, I wish mine was a little thicker sometimes, and yours has the perfect, in my opinion, has the perfect thickness.
Well, I appreciate that, man, and I think you've probably got the most iconic mustache in town. And so we've gone from insurance talk to beard talk, and
3 seconds.
You know, Cassie told me to be interesting, and folks, I apologize because I know that neither one of those topics are probably all that interesting for you guys.
Stop it. It was great. You killed the podcast. I told you this when we first started talking about doing the podcast. A lot of people were worried that their story's not interesting, but the bigger picture here for me is that someone relates to what you've gone through.
Yeah,
someone
absolutely.
out there. I mean, there's enough. There's a big enough following on this podcast. It's not huge, but there's a big enough following that someone that's listening relates to what you've gone through and was hopefully touched by what you did and how you live and the example that you set.
Well, you know, I really commend you for taking on this passion and this project. You know, it's really, to me, you know, as someone who listens to the podcast, to get to hear all of the folks that we know, you know, that we've grown up with or that we've met through, you know, involvement in the community or business, to get to really hear their story. Man, that's cool.
How often do you get to sit down and I mean, you get to go to lunch. We talked about this earlier. You get to go to lunch and have them, but even then, you got 30 to 45 minutes to catch up. You don't really get to like dive in deep to their story, where they come from. I find it very rare outside of this podcast that I get to have these conversations.
I think that's really common nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like, whether it's real or perceived, that we're all so busy now.
Yes.
And to get to hear these people's, you know, stories, the members of our community, their stories, and you know who they are, what they do, how they got there. Man, it's cool, and thank you for providing this opportunity for the people of our community.
Awesome, thanks, man. All right. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening. I love you guys just as much as I love the guests that come on here, and I love getting to hear their stories, and I love that you're getting to listen to their stories. As always, we try to put out a new podcast every Monday, so stay tuned for next Monday's podcast. If you get a chance, get on Facebook. Go check out my Facebook group. Right there is where I send out alerts, reminding you that on Friday, but the Friday before the Monday, I'll let you know who's going to be coming up, and then on the Monday that we release the podcast, I'll let you know that it's coming out that Monday. So it's just an extra reminder. Plus, you can ask any questions there you want there. If you ever want to sponsor this podcast, you can ask that question there as well, or just reach out to me, email, tap me on the shoulder, however. And again, I also want to thank ServPro. Thank you guys so much for sponsoring this podcast. I'm so shocked that people are enjoying it enough to want to sponsor it. That's just crazy to me. But love you guys. Thank you again. See you guys next week.